Okay, so let's go to allowable deductions. So number one, expenses. Number two, we have interest. Number three, we have taxes. Number four, we have losses. Number five, bad debts. Number six, depreciation. Number seven, depletion of oil and gas wells. Number eight, charitable and other contributions. Number nine, research and development. Number 10, pension trusts. Number 11, additional requirements. Ay, okay. So, muna siya, no? Ang summary sa ato ang allowable deductions. Okay? So, hanggang 10 lang. So, expenses, interest, taxes, losses, bad debts, depreciation, depletion of oil and gas wells and mines, charitable and other contributions, research and development, pension trusts. So familiarize yourselves, no, with these allowable deductions because isa ito sa pinakamalaking part, no, ng taxation, no? Maraming questions na lumalabas on allowable deductions. Okay? So let's start with expenses. Now, all you have to remember here in allowable deductions are the requisites, no, for deductibility. So yung rule natin dito sa allowable deduction, tandaan lang kung ano yung requisites, ano yung requirements para maging allowed yung deduction. Thus, yung name niya, allowable deductions. Okay? Kasi there are deductions incurred by the individual taxpayer or by the corporation that are not allowed by law, no? So hindi lahat ng nagastos ng individual or ng corporation is i-allow ng tax code. Yun lang nakalista or yun lang allowable under the NIRC. So gaya na sabi natin kanina, all you need to remember here are the requisites. Let's start with expenses. So what are the requisites in order to claim an expense as a deduction, no, from the gross income. So, first requisite is ordinary, the expense must be ordinary and necessary. Okay? So number 1 is dapat yung expense, yung nagastos mo, must be ordinary. Meaning to say, yan yung normally na ginagastos mo sa business mo or sa profession mo. Okay? And it must be necessary. So paano mo ba masasabi na ordinary and necessary yung particular expense? Let us say, for example, you are a lawyer, no? And nagpa-practice ka ng profession mo as a lawyer. So, can you think of an expense that may be considered as an ordinary and necessary expense? Do you have something in mind? Anyone? Yes, yung gastos sa pagbili ng pagpagawa ng notarial seal. Okay, yes, that is an ordinary and necessary expense kasi you cannot practice your profession kung wala kang notarial seal. That is correct. What else?
Bond papers, attorney and printer, and ink. Bond papers and ink.
Yes. Supplies, no? Office supplies, because you will be printing a lot of documents, no? Pleadings, etc. So, yan yung mga ordinary and necessary expenses. So what if, for example, bumili si lawyer ng car? For example. Can that be considered as an ordinary necessary expense? Any idea? Miss Aguilar.
No, attorney.
Why?
Because it is not already part of his professional expenses.
Are you sure, Miss Aguilar? So you mean to say the lawyer should not buy a car, a vehicle? So mag-ano lang siya, mag-pedicab lang siya, or mag-jeep, or mag-bus? Sige daw. Any idea? Miss Aguilar.
Attorney.
Okay, let's pick another volunteer. Mr. Almasa, what do you think?
It's not an ordinary and necessary expense, attorney, because
sige, go. Because actually, it depends, no? It depends. Kung bumili ka ng sasakyan na napakamahal, like goes beyond your your capacity, no, sa office mo, yung nai-income mo sa office, then it might be unnecessary, and therefore you cannot claim that as a deduction. Pero if yung sasakyan mo naman is just in order to support, no, your profession, your practice of profession, like syempre you have to travel, no, from one place to another, and mostly yung practice ng mga lawyers, hindi sila pumupunta sa isang place lang, 'di ba? Pumupunta sa ibang places. So kapag ganun yung practice mo, you can actually claim that, no, as an ordinary and necessary expense. But yung iba, kasi napakalaki ng value niya, hindi siya nilalagay sa expense account. Nilalagay natin siya doon sa depreciation account. Ito, kasi every year nagde-depreciate yung car, di ba? So doon na lang natin nilalagay sa depreciation kasi hindi siya practical na i-deduct mo yung entire amount ng car, no? Upon purchase. So you can claim that as an expense, but in ordinary practice, hindi siya nilalagay dito sa number 1 directly, no? Like bumili ka ng car na worth 600,000, hindi mo agad yan dinideduct for 1 year. Yung iba, dinidistribute yan throughout the life of the car. So, pwedeng hindi siya sa expense, pwedeng dito siya sa depreciation, no? Lalo na kung hindi pa ganyan kalaki yung law firm mo. But actually you can claim that, no? Hindi lang dito sa expense pero pwede sa depreciation. Okay, let's go to the second requisite. Okay. The expense must have been paid or incurred during the taxable year. So, anong ibig sabihin ng paid? Ang ibig sabihin ng paid is nabayaran mo na yan. Fully paid na. Okay? Ano naman yung incurred? Yung incurred po, hindi ibig sabihin paid na. So, let us say for example, in January, nag-start ka ng law firm mo. And since wala kang building, nagre-rent ka muna. Okay? So, kahit na hindi mo mabayaran yung rent mo, for as long as ginamit mo yung building na ni-rent mo, considered incurred na yung expense. Meaning to say, nagastos na kibali yung expense. And therefore, even if hindi pa siya nabayaran, pwede mo siyang i-claim as an allowable deduction. Nakuha nyo? Kasi ang sabi ng batas, it's either paid or incurred. Ang requirement lang dito is dapat yung expense na yan was paid or incurred during the taxable year. So, if the expense was paid or incurred in the year 2018, you cannot claim that particular expense in the year 2019 because the expense must have been paid or incurred during the taxable year. Okay?
Attorney.
Yes. So dapat yung expense hindi siya contrary to law, morals, public policy, or public order. Letter D, substantiated siya with sufficient evidence. So hindi pwedeng dahil nakapag-out ka ng cash, i-claim mo na siya agad as allowable deduction. Sabihin mo, it is ordinary and necessary, like yung fuel mo, for example, ordinary and necessary, pero hindi mo na-keep yung resibo. So you cannot claim that kasi wala kang evidence. So therefore, para maka-claim ka ng expense, you should substantiate it with sufficient evidence, such as official receipts or sales invoices, or anything that can prove the incurrence of the expense. Ano pa? Kailangan, if the expense is subject to withholding tax, the tax should have been withheld and remitted to the BIR. So kung yung particular expense is subject to withholding tax, gaya ng rent, kasi yung rent, meron tayong 5% withholding tax. Na pag magbayad ka ng rent, minusan mo yan ng 5%. Kasi sabi ng batas, kailangan mag-withhold ng 5%. So, you should withhold it and remit it to the BIR in order to claim the rent expense as an allowable deduction. What else? Ano pa ba yung kulang natin? Okay? I think yan lang yung mga requisites, no? Sinamarize natin yung rule into 5 requisites. Yan. So number 1, it must be ordinary necessary, paid or incurred during the taxable year. It must not be contrary to law, morals, public policy, or public order. Kaya yung mga expenses for kickbacks, yung under the table expense, they are not allowed as a deduction, no, for purposes of taxation. Substantiated with sufficient evidence, and if the expense is subject to withholding tax, the tax should have been withheld and remitted to the BIR. So kapag na-comply lahat ng requisites, then you can claim that particular expense as an allowable deduction from the gross income. Interest. Let's jump to interest. So what are the requisites for interest? So, may dalawa tayong requirements, no, for interest. Number 1 is dapat paid or incurred within a taxable year. Like for example, nag-loan yung company and yung loan na yon is ginamit, no, for company purpose. So you can claim that as an allowable deduction. So, syempre kapag nag-loan ka, mag-i-incur ka ng mga interest expense, no, in amortization. So, pwede mong i-claim yon as allowable deduction. Provided that yung loan na yan is in connection with the taxpayer's profession, trade, or business. So kapag nag-loan ka para sa family mo, so hindi yun kasali kasi hindi mo naman gagamitin yung proceeds of the loan for your profession, trade, or business. So kailangan mong, meron tayong principle sa sa accounting na yung i-separate mo yung personality mo as the owner and yung personality ng business mo in order not to mix yung expenses, no? Hindi ka kakuha ng pera doon sa kaban para pambili ng pagkain mo, no? Daily. So, kailangan i-separate natin yan. So, yung expenses mo sa bahay, hindi pwedeng gawing deduction doon sa income mo sa business or sa profession. Okay? Kasi dapat yung particular expense, kailangan connected siya sa profession, trade, or business. We have a proviso here. Provided, however, that the taxpayer's otherwise allowable deduction for interest expense shall be reduced by 42% of the interest income subjected to final tax. Remember the interest income, yung sa final tax, di ba meron tayong 20% withholding tax doon? So, let us say, for example, yung taxpayer, meron siyang loan. Meron din siyang account, deposit account, no? Let us say yung sa deposit account niya, nag-earn siya doon ng interest income, right? Subject to final tax of 20%. Tapos, on the other hand, meron din siyang loan, meron siyang nagbabayad siya ng interest expense. So, ano yung effect noon? Yung interest expense, you can claim that as an allowable deduction, 'di ba? Kasi granting no that particular interest expense is connected with your profession, trade, or business. On the other hand, meron kang interest income. Kasi meron kang deposit account. So, sabi ng rules, meron ka palang pera sa bank, okay? Yung rationale ng deduction ng 42% is meron ka palang pera sa bank, sufficient amount in the bank, bakit ka ngayon nag-loan? Yung iba kasi, naglo-loan sila para makaklaim sila ng deduction for interest expense. Pero, pag titingnan mo yung mga bank accounts, yung cash in bank ng company or ng individual taxpayer, ang laki ng deposit account niya. Nakuha nyo? Na-imagine nyo? Malaki yung deposit account niya, tapos meron siyang loan. Di ba yung essence niyan is, bakit ka nag-loan, marami ka palang pera sa bank, di ba? Kuha nyo? So ngayon, para ma-discourage yung pag-loan, para gamitin mo yung pera mo sa bank, i-withdraw mo yon, meron tayong ang tawag dito is tax arbitrage. Tama ba ako? Interest. Teka muna ha.